Hi, this is Ashley,
And this is Kristen.
and this is 1,000 Miles of True Crime. Hey everyone, we are so excited to be recording. This is our first episode after Halloween. How was your Halloween, Kristen?
My Halloween was actually really, really fun. I passed out candy until I ran out, and then I went over to my neighbors. They went all out. They had a bounce house. They had, or not a bounce house, but one of those inflatable things and a fog machine and the whole nine. It was a good time. It was a good time. Petey didn't really, he trick or treated or whatever, but he didn't get that much candy, which I was kind of happy about, and I ended up throwing it away anyways. But what about, what, what about you? How was your Halloween?
It was good. So my son is absolutely obsessed with trucks. He's two. He thinks he's a truck. I'm not sure when I'm supposed to seek help for this, but he wanted to be a bulldozer. He had the costume for over a month, wore it constantly, kept wanting to wear it. The day of Halloween and trick or treating, absolutely refused, would not. Yes. And I was like trying to not get frustrated, but he refused to wear it. And then the very first thing he asked me the next morning was, could he put on his bulldozer costume? And I almost lost it. But other than that, everything was great. We had a really good time.
Of course, the day of, he doesn't want to wear his costume.
Of
Oh my
course.
gosh. Did you end up dressing up?
Oh, of course. So I'm really into Halloween and I'm a loser. So at my company, I'll be honest. So my company, I had a huge launch this week. We're actually launching EVs in our platform. So I dressed up like an EV. And so I had this big box truck thing around me. I was a car, and ironically, it was a hit of trick or treating. Kids were crossing the street to tell me how cool it was. So I'm pretty big with the 5-year-olds, apparently. And I don't know, everyone at my work probably thinks I'm crazy because I've been wearing an EV costume around all week and probably will continue to for another few days.
I love that you did that. You just you have no shame. You're shit, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Yes, exactly. But let's jump into our case and we're going to be covering today. So I know that you and me, or specifically me, is sort of obsessed with the Watcher House case. And, we actually covered that back in episode 17 because I'm so obsessed with it. And we were so excited about the Netflix series to come out. So I guess, first of all, what did you think of the series, Kristen? I know you binged it too.
I mean, so again, I wasn't as obsessed with the case, the true case as you were, but from us covering it, I learned a lot about what it was about. And so I was thinking that the series was going to be a lot more relative to the actual story, and I was kind of slightly disappointed. I found that it was just more comedic and kind of corny. I did still binge it, so they definitely got my count of being a viewer, but I wasn't overwhelmed. I mean, yeah, it was just okay. What did
I
you
think
think?
No, I think I had this same sort of reaction. I'm not gonna lie, I did binge it. It was full of drama. I couldn't stop. But I thought it was gonna be more scary and suspenseful and a thriller, but I found it to be more like a drama and funny. But whatever. Everybody's talking about it, everybody's watching it. And I found, and I love what you said, was that a lot of people kept coming to me who aren't that into true crime or not that into weird things like the Watcher case. And we're really trying to distinguish what was real and things like that. And what I found was everybody kept like assuming, who didn't know anything about the case, that the John character who showed up at the house and they thought maybe he was a ghost or something, he didn't know who he was. Everyone was like, well, that guy's got to be fake, right? And I was like, no, that's actually one of the realest parts of it. John List is a real guy and he is a monster. And I found out that nobody knew about him. So I figured today we would cover the John List case.
I love that. I love that. I am not familiar with John List, and I told you when I watched it, I was like, oh, okay. So this guy really did something bad, and it's somewhat in the same area or vicinity of where this all happened, the Watcher House stuff. So I'm excited to hear what you got today.
Well, let's dig in because this really is he's the true monster of Westfield, New Jersey. And I don't know why these people are so caught up on these people receiving letters when clearly this town has some sordid history. It actually doesn't start there because, I always start at the beginning, and it starts with John List being born in Bay City, Michigan. So he's a Midwest boy. And he was born to parents, John and Elma, but John was 61 when he was born, and his mom, Elma, was 38. So what do you think about that, Kristen? It sounds exhausting.
I mean, was his dad in a midlife crisis, or did he just decide to get married later or something? What is that about? 61?
61.
61. Did he have
well, no, yeah, no other siblings. And when I first read it, like when I had first read it, I was like, it actually was like 38. I was like, ooh, that's that's getting up there. That's I'm younger than that. I'm exhausted. So like, good on her. And then I read 61, and I was like, what? That must have been an interesting household. And it really was, because they were very strict. They were Lutheran. I mean, the way he describes it, his dad basically ignored him, right? It sounds like he wasn't super excited about having a child. So it was like, if he wasn't dishing out rules, he was just sort of acting like that little John didn't exist. So, and his mom, I guess, was sort of the opposite. And we've seen that a lot, right? Where they like the mom then kind of overcompensates, and this was the joy of her life. And, he describes her as being smothering. So
It's her only kid, that makes sense. But to be 61 and be having your first kid or your only kid, I could see his dad just, it's like he wasn't even there.
yeah. But I mean, Betty grew up, and he ended up actually enlisting in the US Army. So this was 1943. And he served as a laboratory technician during World War II. Not actually sure what that means, but I think he did well. And when he was just discharged in 1946, he actually enrolled in the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, which I mean, I don't know if you know, that's a pretty good school, and he did well there. He got his undergrad in, I believe, business administration, and then he went back, got his master's in accounting, which is hard, but good for him. He did it, and he was doing great.
I love the emphasis on that. It's hard.
It's hard. I know accounting majors. I'm like, good for you. I can't do it. But enough about that. So now it's November 1950, and the Korean War is really starting to escalate. So List actually gets recalled into active duty, and he's back in the military. But this is where he meets Helen Morris Taylor, and she lives nearby. She actually already has a daughter, Brenda, but her husband had, recently been killed in the war. So she's now a widow, and I don't know, I guess she's looking for someone new. It's the 50s, probably different time. She's got to get a husband, she might feel. And things were moving quickly with them. It seemed like they were falling in love. Everything's going well. And all of a sudden, Helen drops in, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant. And, it happens. And it doesn't seem like they were, he was overly disappointed. He was like, okay, we're going to get married, and they are planning their wedding. And then when the whole plans are sort of finalized, she's like, hey, I'm not actually pregnant. Now, yes, I know you look shocked. And I want to defend Helen for a brief minute, because a lot of the sources that I read stated this, and they made it, or at least alluded to the fact that, hey, it's the 50s, she wants to get remarried. This is a good way for her to guarantee it. And so they're implying that she wasn't even actually pregnant. But I did find a lot of sources that also said she actually had a miscarriage, and she would suffer from a lot of miscarriages later in life. So I'm actually not sure. I couldn't confirm either way, but they did decide to move forward with the marriage. John List doesn't seem like the type to me that would say, oh, okay, well, you lied to me about a pregnancy, but we'll move past it. So who really knows what happened there? One thing I will add is that they also will eventually find out that Helen has late stage syphilis. She got syphilis from her I almost said ex-husband, but what do you call it? Her widow? Deceased husband?
Her I don't even know what the term is. I don't know what the proper term is, but I think everybody knows what you mean.
Yeah, her syphilis-ridden uh, deceased husband. But yeah, so she would suffer complications due to that, but no matter what, they still end up getting married. And pretty quickly. I mean, they were actually married. It was shortly after a year after they met. I think it was officially 13 months. They got married. They were excited. They seemed happy. And almost right after John List would adopt her daughter, Brenda. She got a husband, her daughter gets a father, and they got to move to Northern California because the Army realized, hey, this John guy is pretty smart. We can actually use him. And he became an Army accountant. Just a side note, I think things went well with Brenda. She definitely seemed to be a part of the family. There was sort of a hiccup where she would end up getting pregnant eventually, and she was sort of shipped off for a while to go have the baby. And I really couldn't find much of it. You know how they would sort of do that in the 50s? You go over here, you have the baby, you can't be seen. And I don't know if they gave the baby up for adoption. It definitely doesn't sound like there was this toddler running around the List family home anymore. But eventually she would come back and live with them, and they would actually decide to move back to Michigan. So once he was out of the Army, I think he wanted to be back near his mom. They were pretty close. So he starts working for an accounting firm in Detroit. And then eventually he will move to Kalamazoo because he'll be an audit supervisor for a paper company. And during this time, I've already brought up Helen's struggling. She ended up having a bunch of miscarriages, but she's really trying to, do this to have children with John. And eventually it's a success. And she ends up having 3 children, pretty close one after another. And now in 1959, List has risen to general supervisor of his company's accounting firm. So the only reason I'm going through his resume is because this is actually almost not that important for the story, but it's kind of just important for you to understand who John is. Like, it's really important to him that he's smart and that he comes across as being very successful. And he's pretty obsessed with money and making a lot of money, and he likes spending a lot of money and living a certain sort of lifestyle. So that's why he's just constantly trying to progress. But while this is going on, Helen's still sort of struggling. I don't think Helen's anything John. It's attract, right? She is fun. She's loud. She's opinionated. She may have just been born a little too early. It was not her era. And at this point, she's starting to drink a lot too, which obviously he's not a big fan of. But I don't want to say she's belligerent, but you have this really strict, religious father, and then you have your quirky drunk mom who's also suffering from some hallucinations, possibly from the syphilis and things like that. So again, I think those kids were probably growing up in a pretty interesting household.
It sounds like John might not have been around as much either, and I can't imagine. I'm not saying being a mom of 3 kids is impossible, but I'm sure it's difficult. Do you think that there's some speculation of maybe she linked up with John just because he was like a sure thing? He's going to take care of me. He's going to provide for me financially. Do you think that there was that too? And because, I mean, with them being so different, were they in love or were they just kind of coexisting?
That's hard to say too, because it's like one of those things where when you read the sources where they make Helen sound like this greedy, I'm going to pretend I got pregnant because I'm going to do anything to trap you sort of character, then, it takes on that narrative. Where if you believe she was, having these miscarriages and stuff, then they sort of present her as if she was falling in love. They were in love and just wanted to be together. So hard to say. Hard to say. I would say probably a little bit of both, if we're being honest. She probably had her pick of men there on the Army base. So who knows? I don't want to speculate. Helen seems like a nice lady. So in 1960, her daughter Brenda is now older. She actually gets married and moves out of the household. So Say bye to Brenda. Honestly, I have no more information on her. The only additional stuff that I could find was that she lived out her life in Michigan. She's not some news, I almost said news whore. No, she's just
News
amateur.
donkey. Okay.
Yeah, she's not at all. She's not lining up to do interviews with Inside Edition eventually or anything like that. No, she just kind of keeps to herself and lives her life. And at this point, John decides to move the rest of his family to Rochester, New York, and he takes the job with Xerox. And Xerox, at least at the time, was a very good company to work for. And he even eventually would become director of their accounting services. So again, this guy just keeps moving up. He's doing really well. He's finally starting to make money. This is very important to him. And he's also a perfectionist and an actual perfectionist, not like, oh, we gotta have OCD because, this isn't lining up. No, he needed it to line up. It had to line up kind of thing. And I think that's a really good quality often in accountants. You need to be extremely detail oriented, which I am not. And, you've got to be good, but it can also slow you down, when you're that much of a perfectionist. And I think a lot of times that's just why these companies would eventually let him go, because they could get somebody to do the same job a lot quicker. And, he would be kind of holding things up and they would be like, no, you got to move quicker. So he gets laid off again, but somehow this man always comes out on top and he ends up getting this position as vice president and comptroller at this bank in Jersey City, New Jersey. And then he'll get promoted again and become a VP of another bank. So he is basically killing it at life. He's really starting to make money, doing well. So he decides to move him and his wife and his children into Breeze Knoll. I don't know, weirdest name for a mansion I've ever heard, but the Breeze Knoll is a 19-room Victorian mansion at 431 Hillside Avenue in Westfield, New Jersey. And I've already said it, he's making good money, right? But he's not making this good of money. And this is actually like, he's fallen in love though, it's like he's fallen in love with this house and he's got to find a way to make it work. There's no other option in John List's mind. He's got to have this house. And so he ends up getting it for $100,000. So do you want to take any guesses at what $100,000 in the 1960s is?
I'm gonna guess 600,000.
Ooh, good guess. So it's around 1.2 million.
Holy
So
cow.
yes,
Okay.
it's over 1.2 million. And he just doesn't have enough. He's not going to make this work. So he calls his mom and his mom actually agrees to give him $10,000. You can put that towards the down payment. And in return, she wants to come live there. He's, yes, come on in. We've got plenty of room. And she actually gets to live in the attic, but it's more like an apartment. She has from what I can understand, she has her own little kitchenette area. And, it's really an ensuite in-law sort of situation. So it's a good fit. And it was nice having her around. She helped out with the kids and things like that. So I think everybody was just happy about the situation. So then they're moving in and ooh, did the neighbors have some things to say about John List. So it's this quaint, beautiful little community, and the neighbors come over with the homemade pie. They baked a pie for this guy, which is so nice. And John is basically, thank you so much. I will be keeping your pie. It looks delicious, but I want you to know, like, I'm not going to be that kind of neighbor. Basically being like, we're not going to be friends. Just so we know, don't send me the invite for the block party. I won't be there. And they're just like, thanks. Welcome to the community.
Why would someone do that? Like, did he feel as though he was above them, that they were beneath him? Or, I mean, it's one thing if you think that, but to actually tell the neighbors that, what was the purpose in that? I don't get that. Why even say anything at all.
Yeah,
Just thank you for the pie. Have a nice
right.
day.
Right. Don't invite him in kind of thing. And I don't think it was even so much that he thought he was so much better than all these people. I think he was just antisocial and was like, thanks, but no thanks, not looking for friends.
I wonder what his wife thought about what he said. Was she punching him in the arm? Why would you say that?
I'm sure because Helen sounded like a good time. She was probably like
Yeah.
halfway through a bottle at that point. Come on in. But that's not the only thing. So they would also report other weird things. He would mow his entire lawn in his suit and tie. It was just weird. So yeah, there was jokes that he didn't even own shorts and things like that. And then there's also many accounts of him throwing rocks at neighbor kids and neighbor pets if they would get loose and stuff. So he's just your quintessential get off my lawn sort of guy.
Grumpy, mean old man. How old is he, too, at this point? Is he in his 30s, 40s? What?
Ooh, if it's I want to say late 30s at that point.
Okay. So too young to be that bitter, I would assume.
Yeah, exactly. So, go figure. But he's bitter as can be for some reason. His family is shockingly going to start rebelling a little bit, specifically his daughter. So Patty is now 16. She's breaking the rules a little bit. She doesn't want to follow all her father's strict rules. So she starts, doing things like skipping school, smoking cigarettes, dating a 20-year-old boy. So all these things that can really make her father want to lose his mind. Understandably. But you know what took him over the absolute edge? It's not her dating this 20-year-old boy or wearing questionable clothes. It's the fact that she announced she wanted to be an actress. That was enough. Now he's fearing for her soul.
What's the concern in her becoming an actress or having the desire to take that path? I wonder what that's about.
Yeah, I don't know. He just associated it with the sin, I guess. I don't know. But Patty, I think I'm telling you, she took after her mom, Helen. I think she was a good time. She would tell people she was a witch. She was a practicing witch and she had a Ouija board and all this stuff. And I wonder how much she really believed that or was just having fun and how much of it was like, I can drive my dad insane.
I think all teenagers love that they can do that to their parents and they do it intentionally. So I agree. I think that's probably what she was doing, pushing buttons.
Yeah, I'm sure she was just pushing buttons. By 1971, she actually starts telling her drama coach, because she's even at this point working with a drama coach. So I love the fact that he's losing his mind. And she's like, I'm going to go ahead and perfect my craft here. So she mentions to her drama coach that she's actually afraid that her dad wants to kill her and to kill the family. And I think at first the drama coach is like, yeah, what? What do you mean by this?
You don't mean literally, but she told her drama teacher that?
Yes. And then follows it up with, oh, yeah, around the dinner table, he was asking them, what do you want me to do with your bodies once you're dead?
Wow.
Yes. And again, his oldest child is living in the house is 16. This isn't even a morbid conversation. I'm drawing up my will and I want you all to know I want to be cremated or something. This is like, I want to know what you want me to do with your bodies. Yeah. So rumors are starting to sort of fly, like that, she's afraid of this. I think Helen was starting to also have some sort of fears about this, and I really bring this up too, because a lot of people are like, nobody ever could have predicted this. And I'm like, well, his family was letting people know that they were fearing this.
Who else knew besides the drama teacher? Was his wife telling anybody? about what he was saying? And was this just dark well, we know it's not dark sarcasm, but I mean, did they think it or take it as dark sarcasm, or were they terrified?
Well, I think they actually, so there's other things going on in the house right now too, Rick. So Helen is getting sicker and sicker. So I think she actually brought this up to a nurse or something at one point, but she was practically becoming bedridden, to be honest. And I think a lot of this again has to do with this untreated syphilis, and now she's drinking a lot, and all of these other factors. And now she's on a bunch of medicine too. This medicine's costing about $100 a month. And this is, again, this isn't today. This is what, in the 60s. So I don't know the math on that, but it's probably a lot. I think it's just all starting to kind of crumble in on John. He does not have enough money to pay for this house and to pay for all the suits and pay for this lifestyle and pay for Helen's medicine and
3 kids.
3 kids. He's just starting to lose it. Drama coach lessons, you know? So, and I think this is going to sound a little familiar from the last case you covered. All of a sudden, John's whole personality changes a little. He is loosening up. He is not as strict on the rules. He actually lets Patty throw a Halloween party and then after helps her clean it up. So can you believe this? So as if that's not strange enough, right? Now he's starting to buy more guns. Especially, I think some people are into guns. I find it a lot too with military people. They're into guns, and he already has some guns, but he's buying more. And now all of a sudden, he hasn't done his entire life. He's going to the shooting range. He's suddenly practicing shooting these guns. So I think, I don't know, more and more there's some red flags going on.
He's getting ready. He's loosening up. He's kind of letting his kids have a little fun because shit's about to go down. I don't know, but all right, then what happens?
So this man is like practically giddy. And then on November 9th, this is 1971, so we're in the early 70s, List methodically just starts killing his whole immediate family. So he starts with Helen. And this is while the children are away at school. And he just goes and he shoots Helen in the back of the head. She's 46 at the time. And I'm sorry, we were talking about his age. So yeah, and they were around the same age. So he's probably around that age too. And so then he goes and he finds his mom. And, Elma's like, what was that noise, son? He just shoots her above the left eye. And she's literally just there in her little apartment cooking toast. And he kills his mother, who has done nothing but love him and help him achieve his dreams, take care of his kids, everything. So then he cleans up the blood in the kitchen. He cleans up the mess from his wife. And then he starts, going through his to-do list. He needed to stop the mail. He needed to stop the newspaper. He, went to the schools, let them know my kids aren't going to be here for a while because we have to go see my wife's sick mom. And unfortunately, you know how it is. We just got to do it. And we got to leave, and we're probably not going to be back for a couple of weeks. For a few weeks, we'll be in touch. Then he's at home when his daughter, Patricia, and his youngest son, Frederick. So I said, Patricia's 16, Frederick's only 13. They get home, and right away, he just shoots him in the back of the head. Then, again, he's got to clean up the mess. He can't leave the blood there because he's, very clean, neat, and tidy. Then what does he do? He makes himself a sandwich and he has some lunch.
His own mother, wife, and both of his biological children.
Yes, but wait, there's more.
Oh my gosh.
Remember, he's still got another kid. So then what he does is he's still got more to do on his to-do list, right? So he runs to the bank and he cashes out his mom's entire bank account, takes all that money. Then he drives to the high school because John List Jr. is playing in a soccer game and he doesn't want to miss the soccer game. So he just stands there on the sidelines. He cheers for his son, watches the entire game, and then he takes him home, where he then proceeds to shoot him. And everybody else got one shot to the back of the head, and he shot John List Jr. 9 to 10 times in the head and the chest. So everybody speculates that John, that little John, actually fought back. But yeah, so he just took out his whole family, and then he just starts cleaning up. He puts them all on sleeping bags and drags them into the ballroom, which, to be honest, I'm not even 100% sure what a ballroom is, but I'm sure it's not for your family's dead bodies. And
I'm sorry, that's not funny.
I'm sorry, yes, I should not be making jokes right now, but how effing creepy that this man has his wife and his 3 kids laying there, and then he goes to sleep. I'm sorry, before he goes to sleep, he does one of the creepiest things, and that is he walks around the entire house and he finds every single picture of himself, and he cuts his face out and burns them. So that's why, I mean, this house is just full of pictures with his face cut out of him. But then, yeah, he goes to sleep and he spends the night in the house with all those dead bodies. He wakes up in the morning, he turns all the lights on, and then he turns the heat down to 50 degrees. Why do you think he would turn the heat down to 50 degrees?
Maybe to keep the bodies from, I guess, decomposing, I guess.
So that was my first thought, right? No, he kept the house at 50 degrees because he didn't want the pipes to burst. And even that, I would say, okay, he's trying to get away with it. He doesn't want the pipes to burst. Obviously, that would draw some attention to the house. No, that's not what he said. He literally said, I didn't want the pipes to burst because I didn't want to cause any more issues for the bank, because he wasn't going to be able to finish paying off the mortgage. He has the audacity to be concerned about the bank after he's just killed his entire family.
He sounds like he's definitely got some screws loose, without a doubt.
Yes. So I don't know if I said it. He turns on all the lights. Then he turns on his favorite hymns, like gospel music. So there's this music playing throughout the house, and he just leaves. He drives his car to the airport to try to throw off the cops. And he then actually takes trains and buses, and he heads to Colorado. Do you have any idea why he'd go to Colorado?
No, Ashley, why did he go to Colorado?
Wish I had a good answer, but he went to Colorado. He went to Colorado because he thought Nevada would be too hot, and he thought it'd be nice to see some mountains.
That was it. That was his reason.
Whole reason. It's not like some master game plan here.
But I mean, he planned everything else out. He planned the murders. He planned that he was going to call his kids out of school and turning the air all the way down, canceling the mail. Everything else was planned out. And he just was like, Colorado it is. Here we go. Let's go to Colorado.
Yeah.
No other reason.
Yeah.
I can't figure him out.
I can't either. I mean, I could see wanting to stay out of the Midwest, especially the Michigan area and things like that. But yeah, the reason he didn't have a good reason for Colorado.
But I mean, you killed your whole family. I'm not saying I would do this, but I would think someone would want to flee to another country or, go live off, the map or something,
Well, and that too, like I was like, well, I could see you could kind of live off the grid in Colorado, I think, or some of those areas in the West. But he went to Denver. He went to the most populated Colorado town. I don't know.
Maybe that was where he felt he would blend right in.
Yeah, I feel like you'd either have to go to a huge city where you're just another face, or I don't know, I guess you can't show up in too small of a town or you might stick out too. So it worked for him though, so who am I to judge?
What do you mean it worked for him? What happened?
Oh, here, let's get into it. So finally, it's not even like people are kind of noticing they've been gone for a while, but strangely enough, the the almost kicker for the neighbors is that they notice that the light bulbs are starting to go out. So I don't know. Did you have to replace your light bulbs all the time in the 70s? Maybe I should have looked that up. And
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I feel like back then everything seemed to last longer than it does
Right.
now. But I
Right.
don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be, I'm not that damn old. I don't know.
Right. I don't remember my parents telling me stories though of having to change light bulbs all the time. I don't know if it was that impactful, and it's the early 70s. So, but whatever. The light bulbs are they're going out and nobody's replacing them. So the neighbors are like, what is going on? And they keep seeing this white car drive by and just sort of scope out the house and kind of sit there. So finally, one day, they're like so sort of confused and creeped out by this white car that they call the cops, and then they go out there and they meet the white car. So it turns out that the person in the white car is Patty's drama coach. And her coach is also concerned. Like, she doesn't understand why Patty's been gone for this long, and everyone's basically getting concerned. So the cops show up thinking they're coming to investigate this white car, right? But now they've all had this conversation where they're like, something's going on. We think there might be something wrong with the family, or, we don't know.
I wonder, did Patty's drama coach tell the police too? Hey, by the way, not that long ago, she was saying that her dad was asking, what he should do with their bodies.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know if they were saying that, but maybe that's why they were a little more concerned than like maybe her math teacher, who was just like, yeah, whatever. Patty thinks she's a witch and smokes cigarettes. So she's probably just ditching. I don't know. But these poor cops now have to walk into this cold, dark house. All they can hear right away when they open the door is like the organ music playing over the speaker system.
wait,
And
when did they get found? When did the police go?
it was right around a month after the actual murders.
Okay. So a whole month in a cold house, and so the light bulbs are going out, and then the music on the record player, I'm assuming, is still playing. It's just repeating over and over and over again.
I'm guessing they had some sort of intercom system. You know how huge mansions will have an intercom? And so it was playing over the intercom system. But yeah, you're right. It wouldn't be on a boombox or something. I mean, no. Right?
No.
I don't know.
I mean, honestly,
Like
actually, I don't know. I don't know.
I'm so sorry for anyone who's listening who's like, fuck you guys. I grew up in the 70s. Yeah, just a little before our time. Not trying to offend, but no matter what, it's clearly a very creepy, horrific scene for those cops. So then they find Helen and the 3 kids in the ballroom just laying there on these sleeping bags. And, they're clearly dead. So they'd also find all these letters. John had left all of these letters apologizing to his family. And he left a 5-page letter to his reverend. He apologized, but he claims that he killed his family to save them from poverty. He truly believes that the reverend would, not forgive him, but he'd understand why he would rather have them dead than on welfare. How messed up is that? And even in this letter, he brings up that Patty wanted to be an actress. So he thinks if I kill them right now, they'll go to heaven. But if I don't, who knows what's going to happen?
What kind of screwed up logic does he have to think I can't have my family live in poverty, so I'm going to kill all of them and go just start my life all over again? I'm so mad that my daughter wants to be an actress that's a deserving reason to die, to murder her. He sounds crazy. He sounds out of his mind. Out of his mind.
Yes, but also he's so methodical and stuff. He's not having these, to me at least, it doesn't come across that he's having these, sometimes people will have this God complex or these, they're like, it's not like he's at home talking to God saying, what do I do about my debt and
Well,
my evil children?
that's what makes me say that he's crazy, because I feel like those people that are have that complex or are delusional or whatnot, they are ill, they're ill. They have some type of illness, I would assume. He's just crazy because he's kind of made sense of it all. This is logical. This makes sense. You've got to not be in your right mind to do something like that to your own mother, wife, kids. I feel like that's next level crazy.
And you're right. No, I think you're right. He's sort of done this mental gymnastics that he thinks even his reverend's gonna be like, yeah, man, the poorhouse. We wouldn't want these kids to end up there. It's best to shoot them in the back of the head. What?
That's so, I feel like is narcissistic the right term? That you think that just because you feel that way, that's the best way to go or the best decision or actions to take, that you should do it, when really in reality it's like that doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Does that fit? Does that term fit?
Yeah, I think maybe that term fits. And later, the psychologist will examine everything and stuff and say he's not a psychopath. He's not a sociopath. It is something more along those lines in the personality disorder. But let's get back to this letter. So in the letter, he points out that they all want to be cremated. He asked that all of his books be donated because that's a huge concern right now. And then he ends it with, oh, P.S. Mother's in her room in the attic. She was too heavy to bring down. The compassion from this man.
John. Well, I mean, is he also forgetting the fact that they're like, well, now we're going to come find your ass? I mean, he's writing this letter as if he's knowing that he's never going to be found out, or he has no intentions of coming forward and bringing himself forward saying, I feel bad for what I did. Just completely not remorseful. He's providing an explanation for what he did, and he has to know that they're going to come looking for him. You killed 4 people.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people, when they kill or whatever, they feel like it's just a matter of time. Even when they catch these people who were on the run for 30 years or whatever, a lot of times they'll be, I never thought I'd get away with it. Every day I just kept assuming I was going to get caught. But to me, it seems like John List was like, oh no, I'm definitely smarter than these cops, and I've thought of everything, and I'm definitely going to get away with this.
Well, he almost did, didn't he?
Well, the cops are, they're obviously furious. They want this guy. They want to find him. And they go searching. They do find his car very quickly. They find it at the airport. They find his keys locked in there. Obviously, they're searching to see if he got on a plane and all this stuff. They couldn't find any records. But he had such a good head start. He got almost a month ahead of them.
A month? And the money that he cleaned out his mother's bank account. Who knows how much money was in there? And a month head start is a pretty good head start.
Yeah, I think she had $2,000. I didn't write it down, so I'm not, but I'm pretty sure they said she had $2,000. Which, again, at that time, it's probably not. You're not going to go buy a mansion, but you'll probably be okay for a while. And yeah, everybody calls it the perfect crime and stuff, but I want to be clear, the cops did everything they could to get evidence against him, and they did get some evidence against him, including a photo, which would later shock him, because he claims in Colorado he only ever saw one news article about it, but he was really shocked that they had found a picture. So somehow in the house there was one picture that he didn't destroy. He just forgot about. And then they actually went to his church, and they found in his church directory, they were able to find a picture of him. But there's no 24-hour news cycle, right? There's no CNN blasting this constantly. So to his point, he saw it one time in Colorado. And, you know, they are still doing everything they possibly can. They are constantly trying to put this on the news. They're constantly trying to blast this information out. So they sort of just release what they can, which is these pictures. They describe he's got 2 scars and they heavily focus on that. And then they explain that he's going to have very neat clothing. They predict that there's no way that he could like start, dressing with a wrinkled shirt and things like that. They bring up that he has a military gait. They even bring up that he's got a protruding nose and that he's had hemorrhoids in the past. So they're kind of grasping at straws, but they're like, we're gonna just tell them everything we can find out.
Don't leave that out. Don't forget about the hemorrhoids.
Don't forget the hemorrhoids. Yeah. So then they bring up that he also has a stamp collection. So I mean, this guy is just he's the life of the party with the stamp collection, and that he loves military strategy games. So it's like we're looking for a dull man with a large nose.
And hemorrhoids.
And hemorrhoids. But 18 years go by, Kristen. 18 years, John was able to get somehow very easily. I mean, it's the early 70s, but I didn't think it'd be this easy. He just went in and said he lost his ID and that his name was Robert B. Clark, and they just gave him one. So he basically went back, burned all of his old IDs, wanted to have nothing associated with John List. And when he had first got to Colorado, he actually used his mom's money and he bought a trailer. So definitely not where I think he would want to be, but I think, he's making do with what he has. He's gotten a whole new sort of wardrobe. He's grown out a mustache. He now wears a hat. He's trying to do things to not stand out. But I mean, old habits come back, right? For example, he tried to stay out of the church. He knew they'd be looking for him in Lutheran churches, but he just couldn't. So he starts to go back to the church. And I think at this point, he's starting to get a little cocky too. So at first, he was a short order cook at a restaurant, and that's not his forte. So eventually he'd go back and start doing tax prep. And again, he's getting cocky again. He doesn't want to just be known as some tax prepper, right? He has to go and get the accounting job. So he's now basically back to being John List, just going by Bob Clark. And he even decides it's time to start dating. So he meets his new wife, Dolores. And I will say they didn't just jump into things like him and Helen. They really took things slowly. They dated for 8 years. And, he had said that he was previously married, but his wife died of cancer and they never had kids. So I guess, I don't know if she just didn't ask too many questions, or if, he was just really good at living this new life.
It's not like she could have Googled him. I mean,
that's true. Yeah. I mean,
he got away with a lot. He
did. And I mean, it was 1985 when they got married, and right around then was the 15-year anniversary of the murders. So a lot of news stations were running stories. Again, they were really pushing to keep this story alive. So they actually ran a story where they had his picture on there and everything. And Dolores didn't say anything. But her best friend came basically running over and was like, yo, your
husband's a killer.
Yeah, like I saw your husband going by John List on the news, and she was just in denial. She was like, no.
They didn't have kids, did they?
And I'm sorry, my computer's acting up. But yeah, so she's in denial. She's like, no, not my man, kind of thing. And she just doesn't see it. So these detectives were not giving up. They just refused to give up. And they even reached out to Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted.
Love those shows. Both of them.
I do. I love them both. So Unsolved Mysteries said, sorry, you really just don't have enough information here. And it's not really It's horrible, but it's almost not that weird and kooky. You know who did it. You just don't know where this guy is.
So it's
And
not a mystery. It's not,
yeah,
no.
yeah. So yeah, so they just say no, sorry, we won't cover it. And then America's Most Wanted kind of said the same thing. They were still sort of new. They were looking for things that were going to bring them ratings, and they were this case. It's really old, and no, thank you. But they kept persisting, and John Walsh was like, they told John, hey, this guy killed children, and that just
Yeah.
yeah, and John Walsh was like, ooh, I don't like people that kill children. And they're like, well, he killed his children. And he's like, what kind of monster kills your own children? So John Walsh is back at the table. He wants to hear more. And he's like, okay, tell me, have you put any money into this? Have you, really trying to catch this guy? Like thinking
Private
maybe it's
investigator, all that.
yeah. And they're like, millions. Yeah, we've tried. And he's like, okay, well, do you have any leads? Not one. Haven't gotten one in 15 years, kind of thing. And then he's like, like, do you have anything? And they're like, yeah, we've got a photo from 21 years ago. Like, and John Walsh is great, but don't worry, I've got the guy for you. And he wanted to move forward. He says, I know the guy. Frank Bender he's gonna save us. And Frank Bender is this ridiculously skilled beyond any other forensic artist. He has these abilities, and he actually sculpts these busts. So I don't know if you'll remember this because it's a very famous episode and it gets brought up a lot, but he was able to do age progression, and he met with a lot of people. So he met with the FBI, and he met with all these forensic scientists to really try to understand, how they think John would be, how he would look, all of this stuff. And then he went to work and he made this bust, and this thing is ridiculous, Kristen. It looks like he was using John List that day to actually form this bust. It's
Spot on.
spot on. I will post it for you. The only thing is John List has a little more red in his skin. That's the only thing that I could look at and go, oh, wow, he did such an amazing job. So the
And that's with
episode,
the 21-year-old photo and age progression tools that he used.
yeah,
Incredible.
yeah, it was really incredible. And it was a big deal. It was a very memorable episode. It actually aired on May 21st in 1989. And they were able to turn the bust around and be like, this is where you can see the scar by his ear and all this stuff. And do you remember? I don't know why, but I totally forgot that they had live on there. They would actually have Chase, what is that called? Where you can call a tip line. They had a live tip line. And so they had the detectives on there answering phones and stuff. And they got over 300 calls just that night when it was airing in that 30-minute segment. So John actually admits that he was sitting there, him and his wife were sitting there when it aired. And again, she didn't say anything. This thing looks just like him. And I don't know if in her head she was in denial or if she was like, well, that's John List and this is Bob. I don't know. But
Sounds like denial for sure. It sounds like she wasn't ready to face that reality.
yeah, it's got to be something like that. But an old neighbor of theirs, he was not fooled. They were 100% convinced that Robert or Bob Clark
John.
is John List, and they called immediately. So they call the cops, let them know, and sure enough, they look into this guy. They have a lot of questions, and they actually arrest him at his, place of employment where he was an accountant at the time. And they show up there, and at first he's like, "Who, me? No, I'm Bob. I'm Robert Clark." I don't know what you're talking about. And, but he honestly wasn't even pushing back that hard. And eventually he just comes clean and he admits it. He says, yeah, I'm John List. You're right. And they had all his scars. So he had two scars. He had the hernia scar and he had the one on his ear. They were like, come on, man. We know it's you. So Dolores goes and meets with him one more time, and this guy freaking, he admits it, and then he tells her, you should sell your story. You should sell the story and make us some money. And she just refused. She just absolutely refused. She never talked to media. She never sold her story or anything like that. But just the balls to be.
What a greedy, conniving, narcissistic piece of shit.
Yes. This God-fearing Lutheran man who is just the epitome of greed.
It sounds like he was afraid of being poor. That was really what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So his trial started April 2nd, 1990, and his attorney argued some crazy things, like it was a midlife crisis and all this stuff. I think we're going to need a little more than midlife crisis for you to get away with this. But a psychiatrist would spend 4 hours with him and determine that he felt that with his neatness and everything going on, that he was actually suffering from obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is, I guess it's a little different than your typical obsessive compulsive disorder, but yeah, again, they said he's not a psychopath. He said John was very similar to him. It was almost even more eerie that, he wasn't suffering from anything really, that should have led to this.
How about just call him what he was? A murderer.
Yeah.
Why even label it? Jeez.
Don't worry. They did convict him. They did start calling him a murderer.
Yes.
Yeah, they felt like he didn't show any remorse. He was just cold. He was just a cold, calculated man. Wasn't even guilty. He lacked empathy, and he just generally couldn't read other people's emotions either. So basically, again, he admitted it. So he said he never even considered turning himself in. He admitted that he was just going to start a new life.
And he did.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to know, what happened to the mansion, Ashley?
The mansion. So the mansion, actually, it kind of sat there for about 9 months, and after the murders, and they had cleared everything out. And you know how teens are. So they would bust teens in there, breaking in and drinking and, doing whatever. And eventually the house would burn down. So they don't know, they would label it as arson, but they don't know if they don't know what happened. They don't know if it was an accident or if it was intentional. But I guess the local rumors, kind of some teens were in there and knocked over a candle or something, and the whole mansion went up in flames. So you can't really visit the Breeze Knoll anymore. They've actually put in they've built a new mansion there. It's gorgeous. It doesn't look the same though, but yeah.
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, look it up and look up the original. But John List spent the rest of his life in jail. He'd finally die March 21st, 2008, and that was due to complications with pneumonia. And honestly, that's the end of his tale and how he ruined his whole family's life. But if you do like this case, and if you want to do much more deep dive into it, I highly, highly recommend this podcast that I listened to called Father Wants Us Dead. And the hosts, Rebecca and Jessica, they just do an amazing job. They spent 10 episodes covering the whole case. And, they do a bunch of interviews and things like that. I think they kind of grew up in the area and stuff. So I highly recommend that. A lot of the stuff I was researching, I think that John List is kind of dull. So some of the stuff about him It can be very dull as well. But these girls were really good. So I highly recommend it. I shout out to them because it was really good. I actually, even when I was done researching and stuff, I found it, went back and was listening to their episodes just for fun.
Well, cool. I'm glad that you made a recommendation because I'm always all ears for that. So I will check them out. Ashley, this was great. I'm glad that I now know a lot more about John List and that he was just a killer. He killed his
Yes.
mom, his wife, his family, and then he tried to carry on with his life like nothing ever even happened.
Yeah, but I'm glad. I'm so glad they got him. I'm glad that those detectives were willing to think outside of the box and were like, we'll go to the TV. We don't care what it takes. But I'm so glad they got him. Well, thank you everyone so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the case. Please take just a moment and rate or review us. We really appreciate it and it helps us a lot. And just keep listening. We love you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.